Okay, we're live. Welcome to Streaming History. This will be our 7th episode, I believe. And my partner in crime, Carrie, our resident historian, is going to walk us through as much of Russian history as we can get through. My name is Drew. I'm the resident economist. And shall we go?
All right. Well, we're not hitting exactly all of Russian history or even most of Russian history. But what we are going to discuss is Tsar Nicholas II, who was the last Tsar of Russia.
As much Russian history as we can get through. I didn't say it.
No, I mean, we're not even going to get through a little bit. But we are going to hit Nicholas II and how he was the last Tsar of Russia. And basically how his reign ended with the execution of his entire family. So in order to get a good understanding of that, we have to go all the way back to Nicholas's grandfather, Alexander II. He was crowned in 1855, and he was one of these liberal czars. Like the people wanted rights, civil rights, and basic liberties, and he thought it was a good idea too. So he pushed for a lot of reforms, freedom of speech, right to assemble, labor unions, they wanted all of that, and he wanted to give it to them. But there were a lot of people who did not like change. Like they didn't want to see any of that. So what happened to Alexander II is he ended up assassinated in 1881, which gave rise to his successor, Alexander III, who was his oldest son.
Well, it sounds like Alexander II was greatly influenced by the American story.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still a czar ruling. It's not we want democracy or anything. They just wanted, basic civil liberties. But anyway, Alexander II died, and Alexander III takes the throne in 1881. And he felt that his father being assassinated was all his fault. Here the people are rebelling. They want civil liberties. They want rights. And he thinks this is all his fault. So he's like, you know what? I can fix this. I'm going to bring all of my people back together and bring them back under autocracy. So he brings autocracy back to Russia. He takes away all of the civil liberties, all the rights, all the reforms. He takes away all of that.
Oh.
And so everybody is back under, one czar, one rule, no liberties. Like the liberties for the universities, like all the churches, like everybody's rights there was nothing. Everybody got put back under the czar. So even though there was a lot of, oppression because of that, their liberties were taken away, it was still a great time of, traumatic progress, because this was a time of, electricity, paved roads, the first oil wells, the first steel mills, the first, what else? We've got, steamships, the telegraph. Yes,
Russia coming on to the forefront.
Absolutely, industrialization. Mm-hmm. And, this was also the time the Trans-Siberian Railway was built. So railroad is, huge at this time. But in September of 1894, he was diagnosed with nephritis, which is acute inflammation of the kidneys. And so he died. But when he died, though, his coffin was took all the way up to St. Petersburg, and it was the largest funeral procession that Russia had seen. And when they're going through this funeral procession, nobody would ever imagine that this would be the last funeral of a czar that Russia would ever see. And so after this funeral, Alexander III's oldest son, Nicholas II, he takes the throne in 1896 at the age of 26. He married Alexandra, who was a German-born princess, but she converted to Russian Orthodox when she married him. They had 5 children, 4 daughters and a boy, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and their boy Alexei. And their boy Alexei finally came in 1904. But in 1904 and 1905, they also had the Russo-Japanese War going on. and Russia was involved in that. But the people, they were so poor after 30 years of industrialization that this cry of rebellion just started, to be heard everywhere. They want change. They want their liberties. They're tired of being poor. They're tired of all of this. They want their freedom. They want to not be poor anymore, basically. Industrialization leads to poor working conditions. And if there's no labor unions or no representation, then your wages are nothing. Your working conditions are nothing. Your living conditions are terrible. It's just
it's enslavement. It's a form of enslavement.
Yes.
It's
economic
slavery. And basically it's the capital owners running the show, which is kind of what we see now with the 1%. Anyway, I wanted to clarify that.
And this all comes to a head in 1905 on Bloody Sunday. What it is a protest led by some Orthodox priests. And this crowd, thousands of people, they gather in the streets and they peacefully protest to the palace. And the priests are carrying with them a petition signed by over 100,000 people. And what they want is they want their basic civil liberties. They want freedom of speech. They want representation in government. They want their labor unions. And they want peace with Japan because the war is just not helping them anymore. So, but Nicholas II was not there. Like, he was out of town with his family away. And the people in the streets we're not leaving until this petition gets put in the hands of Nicholas. But, he's not there. So the palace guards open fire on the crowd and people just start, dropping like flies, so it's a big massacre and it's known as Bloody Sunday. And so Nicholas sees this and he realizes that if he doesn't do something, then it's just going to lead to civil war and just bloodshed everywhere between his people. So what he does is he allows the people to elect an assembly, which will give them basic rights, but leaves the Romanov family still in charge over everything.
Is this the onset of the Duma?
This is the Duma.
But the Duma did not exist prior to this.
No. It did not exist prior to this at all. This is the Duma. This is the creation of the Duma, which is an elected assembly, which gives the people, representation in government. But not like the Duma at all, because this meant that the people had a constitution, that they had liberties and that they could do this and do that. And that was just not right in Nicholas's eyes. He believed that because he was ordained by God, that it was his mission, to rule Russia, that he was on the throne by divine right and that nobody could take that away from him. And that if they did, it would mean the end of Russia. So after a year of the Duma, he got rid of it in 1906. He dissolved it. There we go. He dissolved the Duma in 1906. That's what I was looking for. And so, it goes on until in 1914, Russia gets, entangled in the Great War, World War I. So Nicholas decides that he's going to take over the military. He's going to take over full command. He's going to assume responsibility for the entire military.
Well, what we would call today commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief, yes, exactly. Well, this was the biggest mistake of probably Nicholas's entire reign, because what happened with Russia is Russia kept losing so many lives on the front. The death toll just kept going up and up and up and up. And where he assumed full responsibility for them not doing so well in the war, the people blamed him, tremendously. Like their point of view of him, their image of him was just not put in a very good favor because of all of this. But to top it all off, while Nicholas is away at the front, his wife, Alexandra, is back home dealing with, the political affairs of state. And she's got Gregory Rasputin whispering in her ear this entire time. And now Rasputin was a holy man and a healer and this mysterious figure. But a lot of people questioned his relationship with the royal family, and a lot of people did not like it. So, needless to say, Rasputin was he was murdered in 1916, and we saw no more of him. And in 1917, Nicholas II was he was forced to abdicate the throne, and he did so. He abdicated, and he abdicated to his brother in hopes that his brother could do something, maybe. But his brother didn't even want it. So when he abdicated, that was the end of a 300-year rule of Romanovs in Russia. That family dynasty ended right then and there. And I think that is so sad, because what must he have been thinking sitting there when he signed that? 300 years of my family has ruled Russia, and now here I am fixing to destroy all of it. I think that had to have been emotionally heartbreaking. I mean, it really just had to have been.
Use the word crushing.
Crushing, yeah. Just devastating.
Heart-wrenching.
I mean, that was terrible. But after he abdicated, the family was put on house arrest, and they were moved to a couple of different palaces over the next year. In October, the October Revolution would lead to the Bolshevik takeover, and the Bolsheviks were led by Vladimir Lenin. And in July of 1918, on the orders of Vladimir Lenin, he had all 7 members of the Romanov family lined up in the cellar and had them executed. Now, the public was told of Tsar Nicholas's death, but they were not told of the rest of the family's death. Nobody knew that the rest of the family was executed as well. That information was not released until 1925. But, to make this all a happy story, or not a happy story, but a better story, in the year 2000, the Romanov family was canonized as a saint, or as saints, plural, by the Russian Orthodox Church, and were made martyrs. So I think that's really special that this family was,
recognized.
Recognized in history, and will forever be recognized in history as martyrs and, as saints, because their execution, the entire family's execution, was an autocratic state.
Would you like the
And that is Tsar Nicholas II. I don't know. Go ahead. That's all I got. I think that's all.
I saw a documentary, and there was a woman in Florida who claimed to be Anastasia.
Oh, I know. Well, you've seen the Disney movie, right?
I try to avoid Disney if all possible.
Oh, well, Disney made a movie back in the 90s called Anastasia. This family is really famous because of that, story. The story was Anastasia somehow, when all the bodies were shot down, Anastasia survived.
Right.
But she got, when she tried to escape or whatever, she fell in the snow, and she ended up with amnesia, and she couldn't remember who she was, and then blah blah blah, and it made a story. Then she ended up getting back together with her grandmother, and blah blah with Russia. But the reality of the story is, back in the late 90s, they did find they looked where all the bodies were put. After the bodies were shot, they were drenched in sulfuric acid and then burned in a burning pile in a bonfire. And so they
gotta love the Russians.
So when they found all the bones from the family, they did find all 7. No, they found all 7 members of the family.
Oh, okay.
There. So there is no Anastasia out running around or whatever. All 7 members did die.
We're both smiling, but we're having fun as well. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Oh, how was that? Enough to work with?
I think that works.
Okay. Awesome.